We're going to be taking a look at assignment 5. Instructions are to create models from the exercises. We'll be using the Revolve boss and cut. We want to do a comparison between kind of a wedding cake strategy of base boss extrudes and the Revolve features. So looking at our geometries, when we're going to be doing the Revolve. This first one, I'm going to say just watch going through the process. Some of these geometries, we're going to be able to stack up those boss extrudes, but watch this this whole video before you get into creating the model. And we're going to come back and we're going to do the Revolve using just the profile. So comparison will be going through both processes. Let me find a spot for my drawing where I can see it over here. And this is an inch part. And I'm just going to stay in the front plane. Open up a sketch. And the question is, do I want to include the interior hole? No, not really. I think we're okay to go to 550. So at this point in the semester, in the assignments, you should be pretty comfortable finding that origin. And I've said it before, my fingers get ahead of my mouth, and they want to go put the center point of the circle on the origin, find that coincident relation, make the inference, and then drag out, drop it, place the dimension. All right, that should be coming pretty much second nature to you now, picking a location somewhere on your drawing to attach to the origin so that you can get to a fully defined sketch. So the base geometry is 0.75, so 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to go back over to features, extrude boss base, type in the 0.75, and that stacks it up. Alright, our overall dimension, let's fly this back in for a second. Let's see if I can zoom up just real quick, Control plus a couple times. That should help at least a little bit on this one. Alright, so the 0.550 was to the outside. We have an overall distance of 2 inch 0.12, which we could do the math on, but I think it would be easier. Let me hit Control 7 just to verify my isometric. My front plane is at the bottom of the part, and we have an overall distance. Rather than starting the sketch on this face, I'll start it on the same plane or the back face of the part. And this is going to kind of, let's see, 2.76. This is going to kind of go the wrong way initially because the positive direction from that sketch will be going that way. So 2.12, and when I reverse the direction, sends it through the part, and a positive into a positive is no net gain. The only thing that would cause an accumulation of mass or the overlap is if I were to uncheck the merge result. So we want to leave that on. Go ahead and hit OK. Alright, so I can verify my dimensions by clicking, and on the status bar, 2.76 inches. Control selecting a couple of faces, 1.37. Sounds about right. The outside, 5.5. And then between the two, 0.75. Alright, so that gives me the geometry. So we'll open up a sketch on the circle. We have a limit dimension. So anytime we see limit dimensions, we want to be thinking about maximum material condition. And for a hole, the smaller number is the most material. And if we were to go to the 1.5 inches, now again, this is more in line with the manufacturing process of, if I'm putting this into a CAM program, if I'm going to use this to generate physical geometries, I want to be at that that lower value. If I have to bore, more than likely I'm going to have to put a boring bar through the center. So that means that I would step drill it, put a 1/2 inch drill, maybe a 1 inch drill, depends on the material. 1.498, and then maybe a 1 1/4. And if my boring bar could fit into the 1 1/4, then I might stop there and take the last 1/8 inch per side as boring to be able to hold that dimension. So from a program, when I touch off the boring bar, I want to program to that lower number so that I have 2 extra thousandths, which isn't a lot as I'm creeping up on it, to approach that that face and be able to hold that geometry. If I draw this at 1.5 with a minus 0.002 limit dimension, and I program, well, I've already used up all of that material, and I have to be a little more careful when I'm setting up the tools, making those approaches, getting that to size, because I don't have that, even that little bit extra. Alright, so since this is a limit dimension, it's a critical tolerance, I'm going to right click and maybe move up on the screen a little bit so we can mark it for drawing. It will switch from purple to black. That was again the process earlier on. We went into the options under the sketch. Nope, must have been drawing. We unchecked mark all parts assembly dimensions for import into drawing by default. That's why most of my dimensions are showing up in purple as opposed to black. All right, so when we look at the filtering for the drawing, I still have issues with the logic behind marked for drawing, not marked for drawing. All right, so through all in condition, we don't need to exit the sketch. We just go right into the feature, tell it to cut extrude through all, and then that gives us the whole geometry. All right, we have 3 1/2 inch holes, so it looks like 5, but it should be 0.5. The through holes are not clocked anything, so if I hit Control 1, that'll bring it to the front plane. If I wasn't sure of the plane, I could select the face and hit Control 8, and that would bring me normal too. I want to open up the hole wizard on this one, so I'm going to hit the S key, pick for the hole wizard. And one of the advantages, again, of the hole wizard is I'm not entirely sure that this is always going to be a through hole. I may get further in the design and say, you know, it'd be really nice if this was a counter bore and I had subflush, socketed cap screw or relief, or I need a little more positioning so I could go to a flathead and put in countersinks. I can change those geometries easily out of the hole wizard, not so easily if I just make a standard cut extrude. Alright, so previously I had made some adjustments. We want to reset the custom sizing back to the defaults. And this is going to be for, since it's a 1/2 inch hole, let's go with 7/16. Oh, no, I was thinking clearances if we were in the countersink. So all drill sizes. If I was doing screw clearances, then I would need to figure out what screw is going to go in there. All right, so 5/16, we're going 3/8. There's 7/16, 1/2 inch. If you're not familiar with the decimals, then show custom sizing or show decimal values. Probably the decimal values are more useful, that they all show up in the list next to the fractions. It's going to be through all. Position I'm looking for is vertical to the origin, so as I move the cursor across the screen, when it finds that vertical position, it's going to show me an inference line. The little white box is telling me that I'm vertical, but I'm not going to infer an actual relation. Alright, so select the point, Control select the origin. Now I can force it to be vertical. We have a base circle or a whole circle for, or whole bold circle for the through holes of 4.24. So I do not have a construction circle, so I'm going to draw a standard, just regular circle, and then come over to the property manager and select for construction. Okay, so now I can put a dimension, diameter dimension of 4.24, and that will get my geometry in place. Maybe if I grab the point and it didn't quite go coincident, or the circle wasn't made coincident to the point, then I'll grab the point and make it coincident to the circle. So whichever way gets the point related to that bolt circle. All right, so we're going to try the circular sketch pattern. We have 360 degrees. I don't really need to dimension angular spacing or the radius. There's times where those are handy. We're making 4 instances, and the point is selected, and then based on our XY locations, it automatically jumped to the origin since we're working around the origin. Alright, so I should be able to take any other of these points, drag away, and dragging away always reminds me that for whatever reason, the circular sketch pattern has a point in the very center. So that point in the whole wizard tends to, okay, it absolutely messes up my instance count. For just a standard pattern, I could drag that back to the origin. It would have very little effect, and it would actually be a help. In the case of the whole wizard, I want to delete it, and then I'm going to bring the point back, and they will go to be fully defined. All right, so what happens with that extra point is I take this over into the drawing, and I do a hole call out, and it says there are 5 holes when there are obviously only 4. All right, but it's counting the number of points in that sketch, and that would be a 5th point. Anyway, we have our geometry. We're ready for some fillets. The fillets and rounds are 1/8 of an inch, so select, Control select, Control select. We'll go into the fillet, 0.12, and we'll save. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. We're going to make a new folder, assign 5. And this is 7.5, the bearing. And I'm going to make a notation that this was built with the bosses. Alright, so if you want to go through this exercise and build up that geometry, that's fine. This isn't a requirement, this is for comparison. Alright, so I'm going to close this out, and we'll go right back in, new, part inch. And this time, when looking at this, before we pick the front plane, I do want to make the point that the orientation of these parts, if you happen to draw this in the top plane or the right plane or the front plane, it doesn't really matter at this stage. If we can make it a little more convenient taking it into the drawing or into the assembly, we will. But for the most part, what you see and what you build the first pass through is going to be fine in most instances. All right, so for Revolve, we have the center line. I am going to include the hole this time, rather than making it a separate feature. This quarter profile, minus the hole, I'm not concerned with the hole, and I'm really not concerned with the fillets. In fact, I'll leave the fillets out. But pretty much this L shape is what I'm going to be concentrating on. Alright, so I'm going to place that in the top view. And with any revolve, we're going to generate a center line, make it vertical, infinite length, and place it on the origin. And then I'll just select out of it. If I miss, if it happens to stay in blue, we just pick up the center line, drag away, drag back to the origin, and it will typically infer that that relation and get it to go to black if it hasn't already. All right, so my L shape, again, not overly concerned with sizes. There's my inference back to the point. All right, so everything's free to move. And so that first, let's go ahead with the line. It's easier to select, and control selecting the origin. Those are going to be coincident. We have an interior of the 1.498. And because I am starting in radial dimensions, I'm going to go ahead with those geometries so that I can pick them out. 1498. And it does help that I just went through these numbers and they're still fresh in memory, able to identify them. 2.76, 5.5, and notice that I'm not having to pick the center line because that was my first dimension. That got me going. All right, so I'm going to hit escape once. I'm still in the dimension, but I've cleared the center line. It's no longer highlighted. So when I pick my next object, I'm now in linear dimensions, and I can do the 0.75 and the 2.12. All right, so that becomes the basis of my revolve. Quick double check of dimensions, features, revolve boss base, hit OK. Now I have my geometry. So this is the exercise. You should be doing these as revolves. And you know, the build up, as you're looking at these parts, keep in mind that some of these may play out that you want to do the boss extrude. Try it, but we're gonna be on revolve for well, I'm saying that. Let me double check real quick. This is probably only one that is the exception more than the rule. So everything else we're going to be able to do either way. The revolve's just going to be more convenient. All right, so we'll go back into the hole wizard. It has our preset, or our last settings for the geometry: ANSI inch, half-inch hole, through all. Go into the position. I'm going to look for that location. And I do not have to do a circular pattern. I'm going to go ahead and make that vertical. I do like the base circle for the whole location. So there's my vertical in the white box and my coincident in the yellow box. So coincident, grabbing the point. And, oh, it said it didn't, but it did. All right, so I guess it liked the vertical enough. Now I don't believe I have to make these construction. Let's try it. We'll leave that out as an object. I'm going to come over to the quadrants, and we'll put the 4.24. And I don't care that it's a linear distance. Go ahead and accept. I get the 4 holes. So by habit, I make them center line. I think it makes more sense to change over to a center circle. Again, preference and old habits. 0.12 and accept. All right, so that gives me my geometry. And we'll go ahead and save that out, and next video we'll continue on with revolves. And I'm just going to overwrite.